Today, I want to help you understand the biggest lie about blood sugar. This topic has many important aspects. When we believe in this lie and don't understand how blood sugar actually works, we can harm ourselves. Often, we hear that energy comes from blood sugar, but does that mean all our energy comes exclusively from there? This misunderstanding is extremely common in our culture. We frequently hear, "Your blood sugar must be low, that's why you're not feeling well." The problem arises when we believe that energy only comes from blood sugar and that we need to eat constantly to regulate it. Ideally, blood sugar levels should be maintained within a very narrow range for optimal functioning. When we eat, our blood sugar rises, but elevated blood sugar levels are not good, so the body needs to regulate and lower it. This is done by releasing insulin, which causes blood sugar to drop again. When this happens, we might feel low on energy, mentally foggy, and unwell. Then, we hear again, "Eat something, your blood sugar must be low." And so, we enter a cycle of constant highs and lows, like a roller coaster. The body actually seeks stability. When we eat whole foods that contain fats and proteins but not an excessive amount of sugar and processed foods, our blood sugar shouldn't rise dramatically. It may increase slightly but within a healthy, narrow range, without causing mood swings and energy fluctuations. The body can maintain stable blood sugar levels, ensuring balanced energy and mood. While blood sugar is important, it is not the only source of energy, not even for the brain. Many times, we hear that the brain only functions on glucose, but this is not true. When glucose is low, the body can use ketones as an energy source. Up to 75% of the brain's energy can come from ketones. The key is stability. When we eat real food and avoid constant eating, the body knows how to regulate itself. Many people believe they need to eat frequently to maintain stable blood sugar, but this leads to energy and mood swings. According to traditional views, normal fasting blood sugar levels should be between 70 and 100. If you are pre-diabetic, it would be between 101 and 125, and if diabetic, above 125. 30 minutes after a meal, many believe it is normal for blood sugar to be between 170 and 200, but this is not ideal. The ideal fasting blood sugar level should be between 80 and 90, and even after a meal, it should remain within a healthy range without extreme fluctuations. Eating real foods, like slow-burning logs in a fire, keeps these levels stable. 2 to 3 hours after a meal, blood sugar levels should return to fasting levels without major challenges for the body. The body uses two pathways to produce energy: oxidative phosphorylation, with oxygen, and glycolysis, without oxygen. Oxidative phosphorylation is much more efficient, producing over 30 ATPs per cycle, while glycolysis, without oxygen, produces only 2 ATPs. The body can use both fat and glucose to produce energy when oxygen is present, but only glucose when it is not. Fat is a much more efficient form of energy storage than glycogen. The body can store an almost unlimited amount of fat, while glycogen is limited and much less efficient. Most of our stored energy is in the form of fat because it is more effective. Eating foods rich in fat, protein, and fiber keeps us satiated longer, avoiding overeating and maintaining stable energy. Carbohydrates are not inherently bad, but it is easy to consume excess processed carbs, sugars, and starches. Non-starchy vegetables, leafy greens, and fibers are metabolically beneficial. We need a variety of plant foods for a robust gut health. Each person may react differently to these foods, so it is important to measure and understand individual metabolic health. Finally, maintaining stable blood sugar means maintaining stable energy and mood, avoiding problems like insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular diseases. Do not believe the lie that blood sugar is so important that it is our only source, our main source of fuel, and that we need frequent meals to maintain it. This leads to eating high-carb, starchy, and sugary foods, as blood sugar fluctuations and reaching the lower end of the roller coaster make us crave these foods to quickly raise blood sugar. This, of course, causes blood sugar spikes, energy swings, and carbohydrate dependency. With this pattern, You train your body to have highs and lows, and whenever it is low, you depend on these carbs to get it back up. Once in this situation, you perpetuate the need for more frequent meals and more starchy and sugary foods. Does this mean that carbohydrates are bad? Well, there are many different types of carbohydrates. Excess sugar, processed carbs, and starchy carbs are not so good. But others in the form of non-starchy vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, asparagus, etc., and leafy greens are beneficial. Then, there are carbs called fibers that we cannot digest but can be important for other reasons. So, metabolically speaking, if we are talking about a person's metabolic health and their carbohydrate tolerance, the first three, sugar, processed carbs, and starchy carbs, are really bad, with sugar being by far the worst, and starchy carbs not as bad for some people but still not necessary or something to consume in large amounts. The last three types are good for anyone from a metabolic perspective. You can eat almost as many non-starchy vegetables as you want, as many leafy greens as you want, and should eat a variety of foods that provide a wide range of fibers. That is metabolically speaking. If we talk about tolerance, how well people tolerate these foods, the story is completely different, and we have to put a big question mark on it, because there are thousands of different scenarios for why people might tolerate them well. For example, some people may tolerate the top ones very well, meaning they don't feel bad because they are broken down very quickly and absorbed early in the digestive tract. While the ones at the bottom have a much slower processing, they have a lot of fiber we cannot digest, so very few of these in the bottom three will be absorbed quickly and enter the bloodstream. Most of them will stay in the gut and start feeding the gut bacteria. Depending on the type of bacteria you have, you might feel horrible, get gassy, toxic, and not feel very well. We have to understand that there is no one-size-fits-all. Therefore, carbohydrates are not bad per se, but the question is, do we really need carbohydrates? First of all, there are no essential carbohydrates. There are essential fatty acids, essential amino acids, but carbohydrates? No. Secondly, the brain does need some glucose. It can rely on ketones, as we mentioned, but it needs glucose. So, if you are fasting, if there is no food available, which has happened for much of human history, then we can live off body fat. In that body fat, there is still about 5% glucose indirectly. Body fat, as we said, is in the form of triglycerides, which are three fatty acids attached to a glycerol backbone, and that glycerol can be converted into glucose. Therefore, the short answer is no, we do not need carbohydrates. However, gut bacteria do. So the question is, do you really need all those gut bacteria, or could you just stay carnivorous for the rest of your life? You have those gut bacteria to be able to eat and process plant foods, and plant foods feed those gut bacteria, and do the bacteria have additional properties, additional benefits? This is what we still do not know. I am inclined to say that we need a wide variety and to eat a wide range of plant foods. The reason I would say this is that humans, probably in our history over hundreds of thousands of years, have eaten a wide variety of foods, including meat and a wide range of fibers. I would say that this is likely for optimal long-term health. We also need to understand the difference between most and all. Once we do research and something comes back, and they say that this protocol was extremely significant, that this protocol helped 8 out of 10 people get better, well, that still means 2 out of 10 people did not get better. They have some other kind of issue. On this channel, I talk a lot about metabolic health, insulin resistance, processed foods, and sugar because that is the problem for 8 out of 10 people. But it also means it is not the problem for 2 out of 10 people. So, I also try to include other things to help you get an overall view, factors such as stress and various deficiencies or toxicities. If you are nutrient deficient, or if you are toxic from heavy metals, chemicals, or pesticides, if you have allergies, chronic infections, or immune problems, if you have autoimmune diseases, and also something called endotoxemia, you could basically be poisoning yourself from the inside by having dysbiosis, an imbalance in your bacteria. Certain bacteria, when they overgrow, produce something called lipopolysaccharides or LPS, which are extremely toxic to you. But if you have an overgrowth and keep feeding them, you are poisoning yourself from the inside all the time. In the previous slide, I said that I believe a healthy, varied, and robust microbiome is probably best for optimal health because we start to see many of these different problems, and most of them are probably related to the gut. Because there are so many variables, because we live in a very complex and very polluted world, with lots of junk food, additives, antibiotics, and imbalances, we need to measure if we really want to know. there are various things we want to measure. We want to measure our metabolic spectrum. Where are we on the spectrum of insulin resistance and metabolic health? People on the green side, that is, very insulin sensitive, can eat completely different foods than those on the insulin resistant side of the spectrum. The main things we want to measure here, directly involved, are glucose, triglycerides, A1C, and insulin. The first two will be on practically every blood test you ever do. A1C is a hit or miss, and you will never find insulin on a standard blood test done by a doctor. This could be, or is, the most important marker to help us understand our metabolic health. We need to understand cholesterol for various reasons. It is an important factor. It is an indirect marker of inflammation and cardiovascular disease. But we need to measure the things that matter. We need to measure LDL particle count, LDL particle size, and the number of small LDL particles. Another good idea is to measure something about your autoimmunity because this is becoming very common nowadays. You can measure thyroid peroxidase, TPO antibodies, and thyroglobulin antibodies, as they will be by far the most common. There are also tests for brain health and cognitive function. You can measure your omega-6 to omega-3 ratios, as well as your EPA and DHA status, and this will tell you a lot about your brain health and cognitive function. Last but not least, more and more people will likely want to look at their gut health as well. Here we measure microbiome sequencing, a full sequencing of all the bacteria present. Not everyone on the planet will need all these different tests. If you start eating real food and get fantastically better, great. But if you have tried many things and are not getting better, your answer is likely in one of these categories, or perhaps several of them. I will put some resources below if you want to check out more. If you enjoyed this video, you will love that one.